All right, India is, of course, raving about the free trade agreement that we've just signed with the European Union. Host of European nations will now get to trade with India freely, and to our benefit, we have a host of imports that will come into India that will be a lot cheaper, from luxury cars to wines and whatnot. I'm going to list that out for you. After 18 long years, India and the European Union have finally signed a free trade agreement. Europe calls this the mother of all trade deals. Here's why it really matters, and in simple terms, I'm going to break that down for you, what this really does. This deal works in two directions. Europe sells cheaper products to India now, and India will sell more goods to Europe duty-free. So what gets cheaper? Coming into India, luxury cars, European brands like Mercedes, BMW, Audi will all now become cheaper over time. India will slowly cut car import duties from nearly 70% to around 10%. There's a cap. Only 2.5 lakh cars a year, though, get these lower duties. Now, alcohol, wine, whiskey and beer. Wine duty drops from 150% to about 20 to 30%. Spirits fall to 40%. Beer falls by 50%. So, yes, imported alcohol now becomes far more affordable. Phones, gadgets, aircraft parts. Tariffs on mobile components, aircraft spare parts and high-tech electronics go zero or near zero. That lowers manufacturing costs in India and prices for consumers, of course. Medical equipment and cancer drugs. Almost all European medical devices will be now duty-free. Imported cancer drugs and advanced machines become a lot cheaper. So, India begins to win when it comes to textile markets. Textile and garments, EU removes 100% of tariffs on Indian clothing. So that's as much as we can push now to European markets when it comes to textiles. Earlier, the duty was nearly up to 12%. Now it's zero. Leather and footwear. Tariffs drop from 17% to zero. So Indian footwear, leather can be nicely pushed into the European markets without any tariff on our products. This makes Indian products cheaper on European shelves, therefore demand increases. Access to massive EU markets. EU textile market size is nearly $263 billion. India currently exports only $7.2 billion worth. That gap, huge potential. So there's that much more that we can do now, from Tirupur to Ludhiana, Agra to Ambur. This really means more factory orders, more formal jobs, big boost for women-led employment, pharma exports. Indian machines now get access to all 27 EU countries. Imagine that, helping Indian drug makers now scale up globally, and zero tariff on any of the Indian pharmaceutical goods. So, well, 90% of EU goods entering India will see tariff cut or removed altogether. EU expects its exports to India to double by 2032. European companies save about 4 billion euros every year in duties, and machinery and chemicals become cheaper for Indian factories. That means lower production costs across sectors. Safeguards, in fact, included India can temporarily raise duties if imports suddenly flood the market. So, phased implementation, nothing happens overnight. Most cuts roll out over 10 years, giving Indian MSMEs time to adjust as well. Strict EU standards do remain. Indian exporters must meet tough rules on labour rights, sustainability, product traceability. So this is both a challenge and a push to upgrade undoubtedly. Strategic angle with the US tariffs hurting Indian exporters. With US, in fact, we know that US tariffs at this point has really dented Indian exporters and their prospects. So Europe now becomes India's strongest alternative market. So India now will have to cut it when it comes to products being sent to Europe. We'll have to ensure that that compliance standard is also met. But what a new dawn for India. Ambassador Jayant Das Gupta, former ambassador to the WTO, and Dilip Chinoy, former Secretary General FICCI, Dr. Sharat Kohli, who's founder of the KCC Group, all of them joining us here. But before that, I'd like to take our viewers through exactly what Prime Minister Modi said, what Ursula said, and a lot more.
पिछले कुछ वर्षों में भारत और यूरोपियन यूनियन के संबंधों में उल्लेखनीय प्रगति हुई है। साझा लोकतांत्रिक मूल्यों, आर्थिक सिनर्जी और मजबूत पीपल टू पीपल टाइज के आधार पर हमारी साझेदारी नई ऊंचाइयों तक पहुंच रही है। आज भारत ने अपने इतिहास का अब तक का सबसे बड़ा फ्री ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट संपन्न किया है। आज
Dear Prime Minister Modi, distinguished friend. Prime Minister, distinguished friend, we did it. We delivered the mother of all deals. We are creating a market of 2 billion people. And this is the tale of two giants, the world's second and fourth largest economies. Two giants who choose partnership in a true win-win fashion. A strong message that cooperation is the best answer to global challenges. This trade will integrate further our supply chain and strengthen our joint manufacturing power. It will cut.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi, my dear friend, today is a historic moment. We are opening a new chapter in our relations on trade, on security, on people-to-people ties. I'm the president of the European Council, but I'm also an overseas Indian citizen. Then, as you can imagine, for me, it has a special meaning. I would like to share three messages. The European Union and India must work together towards our shared prosperity and security.
All right, there you have it. Interesting times ahead for India and the European Union. Ambassador Jayant Dasgupta, former ambassador to the WTO, I'll start with you. It's such a new dawn that India would see in the next 10 years. By 2035, Europe believes that they're going to be doubling trade with India. So the next 10 years is going to be the golden era for relationship between India and European Union. 27 countries that we open our doors to and they open to us. We've been waiting for this moment, and it seems like the US tariff kind of gave a nudge for India and EU to move to that direction, but here we have it and it's done. What's your view on this?
I think the US tariffs of 2025 have indeed played a role in putting premium on reaching an agreement, on pushing certain things, and on making the whole thing urgent, because a large number of people have lost jobs. We have lost orders in the US, and so have the Europeans. So I think that sense of urgency was activated by the US tariffs. But that alone is not the reason why we have got an agreement now. I think in 2013, when the talks broke down, the ambition on both sides was quite high.
Yeah.
On the part of the EU, it was autos and tariffs on wines and spirits, and some issues relating to investment, etc. Now, what has happened is that both sides, in 2022, when they resumed talks, they realized that they would have to temper their ambition and get a good agreement, which may not be a perfect or ideal agreement from their respective points of view, but it would be a good agreement for both sides. So that is the compromise which has been effected, and that is why we see that a threshold has been put on the car imports, and that is 25 lakh rupees.
2.5 lakh. And also only 2.5 lakh cars that come in. First 2.5 lakh cars,
right.
yeah.
A numerical limit as well, but above that. And similarly, I think on wines and spirits also, a phased elimination or reduction in tariffs has taken place. As far as India is concerned, it will provide 49.6% of the tariff lines immediate reduction to zero levels, and another 39.5% tariff lines, a phased reduction after 5 years, between 5 and 10 years, they would come down. And of course, there would be tariff rate quotas, which means that only a certain volume of products can come in at low rates of import tariffs for only a few selected agricultural items. So that takes it to 92.1% of the total tariff lines, which today accounts for about 97.5%
Yeah.
by value of EU exports to India.
Yeah.
And of
Ambassador,
course,
I
India
have a
will-
question on how important is this in compared to past trade agreements? Why is this really a pivot?
I think this is indeed a very, very significant trade deal. It is the largest trade deal that we have entered into. It is the largest trade deal with a group of developed countries with high technology, with agriculture products, as well as with fighter jets, the whole works of high technology, computers, mobile phones, everything. So this would stand us in good stead. And as you mentioned a while ago, there would be requirements for the technical barriers to trade also to be overcome. There would be traceability, for instance, for many of the products in agriculture, which we export to the EU. There would be other requirements. So all in all, I think our industry, our agriculture sector also would need to gear up, would need to conform to the standards of the Western world, of the developed countries, and starting with the European Union, what better than that? So I think it is a win-win situation from both sides.
Okay. Dilip Chenoy, if you could come in on this, what does this really mean for India? You know, India has agreed to steep tariff cuts on European cars, wine, machinery. Does that and will that hurt the Indian market, Indian domestic market? Now, if you have international quality products coming in for cheap, then why will I go for local Indian made products? You know, generally the tendency is to believe that made in India is not as good as elsewhere.
So, Nivila, that's a very valid position from the, believed mindset of the Indian consumer. But the Indian consumer is also evolving. And if you're looking at the products and where we have made concessions for consumer-facing goods, I'm not talking about industrial goods like machinery, etc. These are really high-value items like, cars over 15,000 euros. That also there's a limit of 250,000. Or European wines and spirits, which are normally higher priced than Indian products.
Yeah.
So it's going to impact certain markets there. But very importantly, in the sectors like, you talked about medical equipment or you talked about cancer drugs, this is going to be available to Indians at a cheaper rate. Not necessarily these are made by Indian companies in India. But one thing is going to happen, slowly. You'll see also a lot of when the market matures for these European companies, you will see investments coming into India. And therefore, you will find a lot of FDI and integration of Indian companies into the European supply chain, which is dramatically going to change it. And one very special feature of this FTA is a whole chapter on MSMEs. And how to actually enable them to take advantage of this includes setting up a point persons both in Europe and in India. In Europe, there'll be multiple point persons to see how the medium and small industries can be integrated into this whole system.
Speaking of MSMEs, there is a compliance cost, and that appears to be the biggest hurdle for them. So, who in this equation bears that cost? The exporter, the government, consumers?
No, I think the two factors, both of which you actually mentioned when you were introducing this. One was the carbon, border tax mechanism, which is the CABAM. And the second is that we will get, used to meeting EU standards. But what has happened here, there's a SPS and TBT agreement built into the FTA, which ensures cooperation and joint working to reduce the cost of compliance. So, actually, with the EU, it's a very interesting thing, and Ambassador Dasgupta can bear me out. This is perhaps the first trade deal we have done where we are both in services and in goods exports having a trade surplus. India has a trade surplus in both the respects of the EU. And that's a very interesting thing. With the US, we've not been able to do it. If we had been able to do it, that would also be in a similar kind of status. But the cost of compliance and the bilateral engagement that is going to come in is going to reduce. Now, whether we had the FTA or not, right, the cost of compliance of standards would have been there. Now, with the cost of compliance remaining, let's say, static and actually reducing because of the partnership and recognition of each of the standards, the duties going away make Indian companies more competitive. Let's say textiles, for example, right? You mentioned we are a fraction, 2 to 3% of the overall exports.
Yeah.
And we are competing with Vietnam, Bangladesh, and Pakistan, which had zero. We had 10 to 12%.
Yeah.
Now the compliance remains the same, but the duties go away. So we become much more competitive. I think.
So you're saying Indian products, quality-wise as well, is going to sharpen itself.
Absolutely.
Amazing. I'm just looking forward to these, progressive, prosperous times. Mr. Kohli, would you want to come in on what this really looks like for traders in India? It's a huge boost for them. What does this really practically change on their balance sheets for Indian exporters?
Good evening, Nabila, to you, my fellow panelists and News9 viewers. Well, a lot is going to change. First of all, it's not going to change overnight. We'll have to wait for a while. This
10
needs
years.
to be ratified.
10 years. The government, both the EU and India has said 10 years, you could really see a shift. That's too long, Mr. Chenoy?
No. Actually, I think Ambassador Dasgupta also mentioned it. If I look at textiles, gems and jewels and leather, the zero duty comes into effect immediately once it is ratified. That means, in 6 months, or if they fast track it like they've been talking about, it actually happens immediately. Okay. Other products, yes, there are phase-in on both sides, right? So there are some things which happen immediately, and there are some things which take time.
Okay. So, okay. Then I'm very excited for those industries where if this is implemented with immediate effect and within 6 months' time, you'll see the moolah flowing in. I don't know. I'm just being, excited for all those traders who have been suffering after the US debacle, right? We still haven't drawn out a proper solution when it comes to US tariffs on India. Indian exporters are really bleeding. So this could really save them. Could it, Mr. Kohli, you were saying?
Yes, it would over a period of time. As I said, this needs to be ratified by the EU Parliament and so on and so forth. There is a certain process which needs to be followed. We need to wait for a while. But yes, a very forward-looking deal, I would say. And it is the largest in terms. It's causing some heartburns in the West, especially the US. We saw a statement from Scott Bessent in the US, which said that Europe is trying to fund the Russian war on itself by doing this deal with India. So some kind of discomfort coming from the other end of the world, and I think rightly so, because we tried our best to do a deal with the US, but because of the vested interests, because of very, very selfish policies, somehow it's not seen the dawn of the day. And we saw some leakages in the audio which we saw coming from Ted, which said that it was the top 3 guys who tried to block the deal there. So this is how a deal is done. I mean, we've drawn a red line here on agriculture as well, Nabila. We should not forget that the red line which we drew from America. Agriculture and dairy is a big no as far as they are concerned. And this is how the deal happens. The two countries, they understand each other, that there are certain structural economy-wise restrictions or limitations which you cannot cross the line. So I think we've done that with EU as well, and I think they have respected that, and the deal has moved over. And the way things are happening around the world, I feel I'm giving a different perspective here. US is alienating itself, isolating itself, and this deal will pave the way for India getting a different kind of respect from around the world. It's not just about I've been, Nabila, to most of the 27 odd nations in the EU. And I found that their shelves at the shops were flooded with Chinese products. There was Chinese dominance in Europe, as far as imports are concerned into Europe. And decoupling from China was the buzzword around in Europe, that we need to find alternate markets. Some of the factories which the Europeans have invested in China, they were looking to relocate for various reasons, because CCP was interfering. CCP wanted to be on the board of some of the companies. So they were looking at relocating. So that's another aspect of the deal where you might see some of these factories coming into India, some foreign direct investment coming into India, good opportunity for skilled, semi-skilled and highly skilled professionals in India to get jobs. And why forget the relocation of the American dream? I would say the realignment of American dream, which the professionals carried. They can now look at Europe could be the new destination for innovation and creation, which they have done in America. And the students, why forget, Nabila, the students who were being, various kinds of restrictions were being put on them from American universities and colleges, thanks to President Trump's policies. And those students can now look at their new destination. There are a lot of interesting colleges and universities in Europe, which, allow me to, I hate using Nabila Hindi in English shows because a lot of your viewers, they do prefer, but this time, let this time be an exception. I would just like to read 2 lines in Hindi. Actually, it's an Urdu couplet, which I found most appropriate for the situation we are in. हमने बदला नहीं दिल की आदत को, हमने बदला नहीं दिल की आदत को, बस वो चेहरा बदल डाला जिसे हम चाहते थे. This is what exporters are saying, that we wanted to export to America, but somehow, America had a different game altogether, the game of tariff, as they say.
But my question here is, why didn't we open this up earlier? Was this an idea that never dawned on anybody else, and just now that under Modi government that they've decided to do this because of the US doors shutting, or at least the way they've cornered India, we've now been forced to think otherwise? Or was it just blind loyalty that India had with the United States? Ambassador Dasgupta, would you want to comment on this? This deal promises zero duty access to 263 billion EU textile market. That's what this deal promises. Imagine the magnitude and scale. If it could happen now, it could have happened earlier as well. Why have we been so sincere and loyal to the US only?
I think you have to view this in perspective, because we didn't gain this expertise and strength in different areas of production and exports overnight. It has taken time. It has taken time to build the financing systems for that, and it has taken time to conform to foreign standards, and also to gain that confidence that we'll be able to hold our own. Because it is not only gaining access to a $200-odd billion EU textile market, it's also opening up your own markets, and where you have to balance it. And that confidence has come about only lately. I think the government also, between 2013 or 14, let's say, the present government, and 2022, this government also did not feel, did not have that kind of confidence to go in for very big FTAs, especially with developed countries. Then slowly, I think the tide turned. We had one with the Australians, then we had with the UAE, we had one with the UK, and now this has also been sealed. So it shows a coming of age for India, where it is not only wanting to gain access into the markets of other countries, but also willing to share its own market with the partners. So that is where I think
you describe it as lack of confidence, Mr. Kohli?
No. It is a gaining of strength, gaining of experience and technology, and becoming mature.
Okay.
So that is what it is.
Okay.
Nabila, necessity is the mother of invention. I think we need to thank President Trump, just the way the people who made money in gold and silver need to thank President Trump. We need to thank partly President Trump. 19 years was a very long time for the deal to have remained stuck. And I think all of a sudden Europe, we were both victims of the same game of tariff. Europe, for that matter, and India to a larger extent. So I think it was necessity of the time, and you saw that in the statement made by Ursula. She clearly said that in the times when there are protectionism, there are challenges, such deals become. So I think we have to thank President Trump partly for that reason, Nabila.
Yeah, right. Here, Mr. Shenoy, what's your take on the roadmap that we have? India, of course, is there any comparable roadmap? A growth chart that we could sort of compare and say that, well, this is where we've achieved success, this is a pattern with which we'll grow, or is this just going to be asymmetrically?
I think, given the nature of this FTA and the very aggressive timelines of reduction of duties on certain percentage of tariff lines over the, at the time when the FTA is signed or ratified. I think it's unprecedented. We've not actually looked at that in any other, trade deal till now. We've always actually said that, I mean, even if you look at the WTO initially when he signed it, when Mr. Pranab Mukherjee was the Commerce Minister, we had 5 years and 10 years, transition periods, etc. This, in many of the sectors, we go to zero in Europe immediately. And whenever we look at Europe into India, some of the trade, the tariff lines go to zero. It also covers services. 144 service lines liberalized for us in Europe, and 102 for Europe into India. And of course, the great, mobility pact that we have going forward. So this is unprecedented as far as the scale, speed, and timing goes in all of our, trade deals. When we did ASEAN, we had 74 early harvest items, right? Even in the UK, we didn't have that, fast implementation. And one thing interesting now, if you take UK and if you take the FTA and you take the EU, I think we've covered the entire European continent and UK. So it's a big block now. Yes, there is some differences in the three agreements, but it's a great opportunity for India to look at it.
Mr. Chenoy, what does it do when it comes to distance? US and India are worlds apart, but the proximity, the distance that EU has with India, European Union countries, India, UK, India, we can really push a lot more that way. What do you say? I could be a naive question, but just asking you how this works.
Yeah, there is one positive of closeness. There's one challenge of language. And I'll come to both of them.
Right.
So if you look at the closeness of proximity, right, and if you look at the sectors that are going to zero, whether it's textiles, leather, gems and jewelry, right? For example, leather have said that they'll double in the next 2 years.
Yeah.
Gems and jewelry is saying they're looking at 30 billion by 2030, some number like that. Now, the proximity and the relationship that we have, and we were unable to actually meet the cost requirements of consumers there, and we were serving a certain segment and facing competition from countries that were at zero or near zero tariff, and facing competition like, you just mentioned earlier, that Chinese goods in Europe. Now the China plus one strategy can play out very effectively here. Europe also wants to kind of have an alternate supply chain to China. So there are multiple things that are coming together.
I just hope we don't become more import dependent.
I think that's something with which Indian industry will have to stand up and perform. Right.
Yeah.
And
so this is testing time for India as well. Yes, we're getting cheaper international goods, but what are you doing to make India shine? How are you going to insert yourself in the global supply chain?
Absolutely. And the challenge, the thing here is that, for example, it's not necessary if you have zero duty that your goods are going to flood the markets. We've had, I think Ambassador Dasgupta will say that we've had nearly zero duty of textile imports into Japan. But we've not been able to capture the market because we've not been able to, understand, or the Japanese have a very emotional thing to made in Japan. And so we have to look at different aspects here as a country of how we ensure that we can make India, global. And one very interesting aspect of this FTA is that those countries which don't recognize Ayush, right, will now recognize this system of medicine and will allow the treatments to happen there. So there are some very interesting nuggets, if you look at it, which are looking at traditional
You mentioned language, though. You interestingly mentioned language, which slipped from my mind when I explained. How does that work? Now that will be a challenge?
I think you heard earlier, the thing that it's open mobility, right?
Yeah.
Now, unlike the US, where you can succeed with English language, in Europe, most of the countries, so if you know, if you want to send a skilled labor person to Germany, he's got to pass a B1 in German. Or if you send someone to Italy, he's got to pass the language in Italy, right? So it's a kind of a thing that opens up a new avenue of training and language courses in India. But Indians have to be proficient at learning these languages going forward. And, you know, Prime Minister Modi said this 3 years ago when he addressed, you know, the skills sector. He said, you must learn languages because the world is your market. And the other thing is important is that there is some recognition of, you know, degrees and qualifications across each, you know, across between the EU and India. And where in other cases, you have to qualify for the different exams or standards that are there. So it's a huge opportunity. If Indians want to make use of it, they got to understand the languages, so, you know, and look at the EU.
And that said, I think the EU, all 27 countries, I am positive that people understand English very well. They have a close association with the English country, the United Kingdom. So people are very familiar with the English language.
Yeah, but the laws require for in some sectors that you have to be language proficient, including, you know, if I take a truck driver.
Okay, that's good. That's just a plus. But you do agree that Europe is proficient in English.
They have proficiency in English, but not. It's not like
not to the mark. Of course.
Not compared to UK and the US.
Of course. A final word, if you have to pick 5 sectors that will boom in the next 6 months in your vision.
So not 6 months. It's you know, the ambition is to do the trade, you know, ratification by the European Parliament in 6 months, and the Indian process that. But if I say early 2027, and that gives Indian firms to prepare. I would take textiles and apparel, 1. I would take leather and leather products, 2. I would look at gems and jewelry, 3. I would look at chemicals. You know, chemicals is actually a $500 billion dollar market in Europe. Marine products, you know, the beating that we've taken with the US tariffs and certain other actions in certain other geographies, it will be there. And again, in the agricultural products, we are looking at spices, tea, and processed foods.
Right.
These are the top segments that I'll see that look out from India to the EU.
Mr. Kohli, you wanted to comment?
I just wanted to, Nabila, comment on the language issue. I think in the days of technology, I really don't think language is an issue. People use translators. They've been working all over the world. So I think that's a thing of past. But I do feel that Indian manufacturers must catch up on quality, because where they were beaten right now was on quality and price. We've overcome probably the price barrier. But I think people need to pull up their socks on quality if they really want to set up a base, especially the newer ones. We have $188 billion of bilateral trade even now with the EU. But then I'm sure there are a lot of new exporters after today's handshake who are looking forward to. They need to brush up their quality, make sure that they deliver because Chinese competition is still going to remain there. There are a lot of importers in France and Germany that I know who are very, very impressed with the Chinese stuff coming in there. So you'll have to really take their place. You'll have to make your place. It's not going to be as easy as it appears on the face of it.
Absolutely. I think that's precisely what we all agree on, that exciting times ahead, but India will have to level up. Thanks very much, all three of you. That's all I have time for.